Okay, so for those who don't know, Jeremy here is a long-time, probably lifetime Celtics fan, and I lived with him my junior year of college. It was a wonderful time. I had every sports update that anyone could possibly give you, but I remember most importantly that Jeremy was a very, very animated Celtics fan. So tell me, Jeremy, how are you feeling right now? You're in the Eastern Conference Finals. You just won. You're still alive. How does it feel?
So I don't know if I'm going to give you the answer that you want, but I'm going to give you the answer that I have. And the answer that I have is that I hated the Celtics more last night than I have in the previous 3 games of the series. And you might say that's weird. They won. They staved off elimination. Yes, that's true. But they played to a level that I know that they can reach. And that might be what annoyed me the most. Through the first 3 games of the series against the Heat, they were completely asleep at the wheel. Look no further than Game 3. Massive blowout down in Miami. They weren't competitive. You could argue they quit on their coach. They quit on each other. They quit on their fans. The whole shebang. And then they come out in Game 4, and it looks like they have every excuse to give it up. The Heat are up 9 early in the third quarter, and they had just gone on a mini run. Max Strus got blocked by Jason Tatum. He gets the ball back and hits this not crazy 3, but he hits another 3. And you felt, man, the Heat are going to get every loose ball. They're going to get all these breaks, and they're going to win this series, sweep the Celtics away on their way to the NBA Finals. And the Celtics finally showed some mental toughness. And all I want to say is, like, where was this? Where was this before? That's what's stunning to me. That's what's frustrating to me, is that this Celtics team, I maintain, it's still true, the only team that can beat the Celtics is the Celtics. And they proved it again last night because they took down the Heat.
This has been the story for the Celtics for as long as I've been watching them, which has been about 5 years. They're immensely talented, but it's always just these shoot yourself in the foot kind of moments, you know? I mean, you might want to look at Grant Williams perhaps poking the bear in Game 2.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that
and get to just a second. But you're right. If we go back to last night's game, it definitely does not start the right way. You think, like, okay, if the Celtics are going to come out, they're going to come out fighting. They're going to come out guns blazing. But they fall behind really quickly. And it seemed like the same stuff, like stupid turnovers, giving up transition dunks. And then you're just thinking in your head, okay, here we go again. They're down by 9. They have no fight. But there were these small moments from players not named Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum that really, I think, gave the Celtics some life. The first one I can think of was earlier in the first or second quarter, Derek White has this put back and one that closed they cut the lead down from like some 9 to 6 or something like that. Al Horford's making some threes. And even Grant is hitting some shots. And you're thinking, man, the Celtics really do have a chance here. I want to look at that moment you brought up, that block on Max Strus, because there's a part of that sequence that you're leaving out, which is that the Celtics give up like 4 offensive rebounds to the Heat. And then that happens where Strus gets blocked, but he still makes a 3 to push the lead to 9. You're thinking, oh my gosh, like that might be the game right there. But somehow, some way, the Celtics find a way. Jason Tatum shows up. Jaylen Brown, I mean, he has his moments here and there. But I want you to talk about Jason Tatum for just a second, because it always feels like he's coming up when it's like last second, literally single elimination. I mean, how do you rely? Are you hoping that Jason Tatum can do this all the time, or what's the deal?
So, I equate it to this: we've all had friends. You are not among them, but you and I both know people that wait until the last minute to do things. They may have a project that they get 3 weeks to do, and then the night before it's due at about 10 p.m. they say, "Oh crap! I got to go and write a 5-page paper. I got to go prepare my shareables and all these other presentation, whatever you want to call it." The Celtics seem to be like that. And it's not just limited to Jason Tatum. I think it's the entire team, but we'll focus on Tatum for a second. It feels like when they truly have no slack left, when they're truly at the end of their rope, that's when they decide to perform. Now, yesterday, Jason Tatum made his first fourth quarter field goal of the series. He scored 25 points in the second half. Good performance. When the Celtics, as aforementioned, when Max Strus hit that 3, I believe they went up 9 with about 10 and a half minutes to go in the third quarter. Jason Tatum scored the next 8 points. Like, he did step up, but one of the problems that I have with Tatum is something that has been kind of his calling card his entire career. Dude's smooth. He's smooth. He glides. He has the style. He has the bearings of a superstar. I've never seen him yell at anyone other than a ref. I've never seen him get in somebody's face. We talked last podcast that I was on with you about the the quote unquote, like the grit, the grind, the
mental toughness,
the competitive fire more so in a player. Jason Tatum really has not shown me that he has that yet. And I'm not going to say that he can't figure it out, because obviously he's still, this is I think his 6th year in the league if I'm not mistaken, and he's only 25, something like that. Either way,
he's only 19.
There's still that mean that he's only 19. He still executes like a 19-year-old down the stretch. One of the problems with the Celtics team is back in 2017-18, Tatum's rookie year, Brown's second year, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals and took LeBron James to Game 7. Not only did they take LeBron James to Game 7, they did it without Kyrie Irving, without Gordon Hayward, and they had a lead in the fourth quarter. Well, that's great. Then they started missing shots down the stretch, didn't have late game execution, and fell to the Cavs in 7 games at home. And I think they still have the same level of late game execution as they did then. That was like 6 years ago. That's their problem. It's always when you get into pressure situations, their offense especially falters. And even more so in this series against the Heat, their defense was suffering. They weren't playing defense. I think part of the team that went to the finals last year.
I think a great way of pointing that out is just, did you feel comfortable at all when they had that 17-point lead in the fourth quarter? I mean, did you really feel like we had the game in the bag?
I didn't want the starters to come out.
Exactly. I think there was like this moment where there might have been 3 minutes left in the game, and Jimmy Butler just has like this wide open dunk to cut the lead down to 14. And then I think Justin next to me was like, oh gosh, here we go again, right? It feels like any moment could be the moment where the lead that you spent so much time and effort building will just evaporate in just 3 possessions. I want to quickly talk about Joe Maz. Second row Joe, as Bill Simmons loves to call him. Mostly because his dad, I guess Bill Simmons' dad, he calls him second row Joe because he was sitting in the second row last year, and now he's the head coach.
Yep.
Joe Maz, for all the flack he gets, also showed up at the midnight hour. I look at the first quarter when things were kind of getting out of hand. What does he do? He calls a quick timeout. I was like, oh my goodness, good timeout from Joe Maz. And then another good moment was later when they're going on their big 18-0 run. They might have cut the lead down to 3, because I think Jason Tatum makes 2 threes in a row, scores 58-61. Kevin Love comes out, misses a jumper, little hook shot, and then they kick the ball to Jaylen Brown in the corner, who we'll talk about in just a moment. And he and Horford trying to run this. They're trying to run this 2-man thing, but he gets stuck, and you're thinking, oh gosh, here comes the Jaylen Brown turnover to a transition dunk, and then you hear the referee blow the whistle, and it's not a travel, it's a timeout. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, great timeout. Next possession, they draw something up. Marcus Smart kicks it to Horford, kicks it to Derek White in the corner, 3-point shot, tie game. I was like, oh my goodness, the Heat really looked mortal for a second. And so I want to ask you, you've seen a lot of Celtics coaches. What's the temperature check on Joe Maz right now?
I still don't think Joe Mazzulla has it. And I may be unfair, but I'm very confident in saying that at this point, based on what we've seen, and it's not just the playoffs, it's the regular season too. Whether or not a coach has it, I don't know how to quantify it, but when you see a head coach, does he look like a head coach? I don't think Joe Mazzulla does.
He's just young. He's just young. Do you think if Joe Mazzulla was 10 years older, he would be head coach?
I don't know if I can say that given age. Like I don't think age has anything to do with it for me. I just look at him and I see some of these timeout decisions. I see some of these other things that he does, and I just go, man. Imagine if you could pick a bum coach, or who people consider a bum coach, Frank Vogel. If Frank Vogel was in charge of this team, I think that they'd be a lot better off than they are now. And that's not to say that coaching has a tremendous impact in the NBA. I am of the mindset that it has actually very little to do. But sometimes coaches can affect games in small ways. It's not. Bottom line is, coaching is not the reason that you will lose this series, but it's not going to be blameless either. And Joe Mazzulla is getting coached circles around by Eric Spoelstra. So I don't want him back next year, personally. The problem with that is that the Celtics would then be on their 4th head coach in 4 years. And I know that they're not going to do that.
Do you think he's like a good coach, but just maybe not a great coach? I mean, he's
I
doing
don't
pretty
know.
well.
It's tough to tell. There are a couple factors going against them. Number one, they've lost a lot of veteran leadership on their coaching staff because they didn't
Will
fill
Hardy.
the guy. Yeah, Will Hardy went to Utah, and then Damon Stoudemire took, I want to say, the Georgia Tech head coaching job middle of the season. They haven't replaced either one of them. That falls on Brad Stevens, president of basketball ops, for sure. You got to hire some other guys, Brad. But also, I don't know why they gave a 34-year-old first-time head coach the reins to a championship caliber team in terms of talent. Like, I wanted a veteran guy. I didn't understand when they hired him in the first place. It's clearly proving to not be the right decision, regardless of how this series turns out. I think we know now that he's just kind of in over his skis, and it's no fault to him. I don't think he should have been given this job, and I'd be okay if they decide to move on after the season. But again, I don't think they will.
I think they just had to remedy that Udoka situation. You know, hiring him felt.
Why not hire Will Hardy then?
Yeah, it felt premature because, I mean, sure, you have the interim coach and he's doing a good job, but it only was half a season. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I think Joe Mazzulla, you know, Jordan Poole is known for his facial expressions. Have you been watching Joe when they cut to him? He's always making like this exasperated like face, like he just can't believe what he just saw. He's like squinting. He's like, "What? Wait, what just happened?" It's just this funny thing I see with Joe Mazzulla. He just looks so lost out there. And plus, he watches The Town apparently 4 times a week. What are your thoughts on that?
Freaking insane. That's psychopathic tendencies, if you ask me. It also, he doesn't help himself either, because after Philly game 2, when they won, they quote unquote adjusted, beat Philly in game 2 after they gave away game 1 to James Harden and his 40-something points. He goes, "Does anyone want to ask me about my adjustments?" No, Joe, because look at what you did the next, 6 games. You wet yourself in every single one of them. The dude's got an attitude. He's been short with the media, Belichickian almost, you might say, throughout the year. And he just goes someone asks, "Hey, Joe, what'd you see there?" "I saw offense." "Okay, Joe, but can you expound on that?" "We did not put the ball in the net." It's so annoying. Dude, you don't get to have this attitude if you're a rookie coach, and quite frankly, you're not really doing much. The joke around here is that Marcus Smart's coaching the team. He's talked as if he's coaching the team. He had a quote the other day, I want to say a couple weeks ago after Game 5, saying yeah, Joe's been pretty bad this year, but we're teaching him as we go along. It's like, dude, what? What is that? What is that?
It must be weird being coached by someone who's younger than Al Horford. You're like, wait a second.
Yeah, but he's still older than Smart, which is
but not by much. Again, it's kind of like having
age should matter. Eric Spoelstra took over when he was 30-something. He's the second best coach in the NBA behind Popovich. Some could argue the first. He's the best coach in the NBA.
It's true. I also remember, vaguely, that everyone thought they should fire Eric Spoelstra when he was 100%. First on the Heat.
People have been asking for that for years, up until he led the Heat to the bubble finals. Then they were like, okay, maybe he's not that bad. And then in the last couple of years, he just keeps on chugging along. He doesn't care. So I don't understand the hate for Spoelstra. I do understand the hate for Mazzulla. But again, I think talent is what's going to win you an NBA championship, not coaching. And the Celtics will win a title when Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum decide they're ready. Let's
talk about Grant Williams for a second.
Yep.
Grant. My goodness. I mean, so many times this year does Grant I'll make both is the first thing I can think of, right? So many moments where Grant just puts himself in the doghouse. He doesn't. No one else was doing. There was no one else is doing. It was just him. And honestly, at the time when he was getting in Jimmy Butler's face, I didn't know if I disliked it that much, because I think that every team needs to have some swagger, some kind of competitive edge. And I hadn't seen it from Jaylen Brown, hadn't seen it from Jason Tatum to that point. I kind of liked, maybe don't go after Jimmy Butler per se, but showing that sort of will to win, showing that competitive toughness, just competitiveness in general, I don't think it's a bad thing. What were your thoughts on that?
I had no problem with it. And I think you should know by now that I dislike Grant Williams immensely. He is my least favorite player on the Celtics. I actively root for him to suck most times. I don't really care if he does well or not. I think he's got a massive ego and he whines way too much.
Correct.
But in Game 2, I was probably the biggest Grant Williams defender on Celtics Twitter that night, and I've stayed defending him ever since, because I think he's being unfairly blamed for the Game 2 result. I want my players to stick it to the best players on the other team. That's what you do in a playoff environment. That's what you do when the stakes are high. You show emotion, you show toughness, you show fight. I don't think Jimmy Butler needed Grant Williams to get in his face to score 30-plus points that night, because that's what Jimmy Butler does. I respect the hell out of Jimmy Butler. I would take him on my team all day. Do I think he needed motivation from Grant Williams to do what he did? Absolutely not. Did any of the Celtics teammates show the same amount of fight that Grant Williams did? No. And if they did, maybe they win game 2. Maybe Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum don't combine to get 1 field goal in the fourth quarter and 8 points. There was no excuse for what the rest of the Celtics did in game 2. And you can extend that all the way down the lineup. I liked what Grant did. I always want my players doing what Grant did. And I'm glad that they did not take him out of the rotation because of what he did. Because he showed up last night. Him and Rob were the 2 best players on the floor for the Celtics, in my opinion. They were impacting the game right from minute 1. They played hard defense. Grant stuffed Jimmy Butler at one point, which is freaking ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I'm going to jump in here and talk about that very quickly.
Yep,
I think during that moment, they were going on a bit of a run. The score might have been like 90-83. They'd just taken the lead and were kind of building it out. And I think before this, the Celtics they forced a few turnovers. Like, Derek White comes up and blocks Duncan Robinson from behind, and then they strip Bam while he's trying to drive to the lane. And Grant blocking Jimmy Butler, I mean, I think that set a different tone. It really did. I think that's where the momentum really shifted in favor of the Celtics, because we all know what happened in Game 2, as we just talked about, and seeing Grant block him and not talk trash. Even Reggie Miller pointed that out. He just blocked him, got the ball up the floor, and just kept playing. And that was such a big play. Such a big play to block their best player and then to go down and get a bucket. I mean, my goodness. Grant Williams played such an important role. I mean, those 14 points, critical, huge.
Can I ask you, as an outside observer, last thing on the Celtics, do you think that this is a series? Do you think that they can come back or no?
This is a great question. I was talking about it with Justin last night. If you had to ask what would the recipe be to win 4 straight while being down 3-0, having the more talented team would definitely be a big part of that. I mean, I don't think there's any question about it. The Celtics have way more talent than the Heat. They've just been being outplayed, being outcoached, out efforted, whatever.
Yep.
But the Heat are banged up. And Gabe Vincent tweaked his ankle last night. I don't know how he's going to be for the rest of the series. He already looked a little bit slower.
It shouldn't matter.
Shouldn't matter. But the Celtics have games 5 and 7 at home, the more talented team. And you saw what they did tonight. They made almost 23s. I think that can happen at any point. I mean, that's what they did the whole season. They just looked unstoppable. So is this a series? I think it is. Because I think if they win Game 5, the pressure is on the Heat to win Game 6. Because you had a chance to close them out, and you didn't. You gave them life. You let them win Game 1. Sorry, let them win one game. Is it a series? Yes, by definition. But got to take it one game at a time. Can't get too far ahead of yourself.
I think, for the reason that you just stated, it's not a series until they win Game 5. And the fact is that the Celtics have a sub-500 record at home this season.
Shocking.
Incredible for what many consider to be the best environment, the best playoff environment, best NBA environment in the association. TD Garden oftentimes is going home unhappy during this playoff run, which is crazy to think about. But if they win Game 5, then maybe I'll start to believe. Right now, I won't. But what I will say is, for people who want to believe, there are reasons to. And the reasons are that the Heat were not that good of a team in the regular season this year. Last night was the closest that we saw to them being that regular season team. Jimmy Butler missed some bunnies. Bam was completely non-existent. The closeouts were better. The defense was more cohesive and more of a team unit as opposed to one-on-one defending.
Swarming.
The three-point shooting from the Heat suffered as a result. Duncan Robinson, Strus, Vincent, all of those guys were not as efficient shooting from 3. If they can figure out a way to do much the same at TD Garden, then you head back down to Miami and try and see if you can make it a game in Game 6. The thing that is really holding me back from forcing myself to believe in this team is Jimmy Butler. Because my God, that guy's
He's scary. He's scary.
I respect the hell out of Jimmy Butler. I'll say it until the cows come home. That dude is everything I want in a basketball player. He may not be the most talented, but man, does he have massive cojones, and he takes it to you whenever he needs a bucket. He had a bad game in Game 4. So in theory, he should come out more motivated in Game 5. The Celtics are the more talented team. The Celtics can play up. If they play up to their level like we saw last night, they can win. It's just not a guarantee with the Celtics team. They are predictable in the sense that you never know what is going to come. That's how predictable they are. You know that you have no idea what Celtics team is going to show up.
We'll see what Celtics show up tomorrow night in Game 5. Let's take a break.